That's good too. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Please find a seat. We'll have plenty of time to schmooze after our service at our homemade Shabbat. We are live streaming. Yes, David? Are we on the air? We're on the air. Many of you I know joined us throughout the pandemic. I was broadcasting from variety locations in my home. We picked up a little bit of a fan following. While you're getting seated, I just wanted to do a shout out to my friends in Scotland, Jamie Hines. I know he's watching because he sent me a name to read later. So, wow, we missed you all. I hope you missed us too. I tried to say as much as possible, but honestly, I don't think many of us ever knew whether this day was going to arrive. And here we are. And Jerry Beaker's got a little L'chaim up. So we can say on the item. We're going to start by, you can go ahead and keep those doors open. I think it might be better for right now for circulation. We're going to, everybody here vaccinated, right? Yeah. Find someone who's not, make them do it with your powers of persuasion and your love and your whatever weaponry you have. So we're going to begin right now before we start our service proper with words from our new president, our new board president, Ned Greenberg, who's been a member for a while now, and his beautiful family. I had the pleasure of officiating at his youngest son's bar mitzvah. Most of you know him, and I'd like to invite Ned to give us words of Shabbat Shalom and greetings.
Shabbat Shalom. I have the distinct privilege of welcoming you all back in person to the temple. Say welcome back to normal. If I squint, we can see what all the squares on the computer screen. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the laughter. Can you unmute? That's fine. That's perfect. Okay. So I want to start tonight by saying that I have never been more proud to be a member of this temple. And I'll tell you why. It's because through a year of COVID diaspora, we maintained ourselves as a community. How do I know this? Well, first example is, look at this room right now, all of you here. So thank you so much for coming. And I mean, the weather didn't keep you away. I'm very happy to see you. But there's some other reasons I want to point out too. And I have to harken back to the computer analogy, because it was on those computer screens and tablets and iPhones, those little tiny squares that we managed to keep connected to one another. And it's resulted in us staying connected, and that's so important. So the things that happened on those squares. Let's start with Jeff, because Jeff and his one-man Arthur Lieberman production company put together a heck of a show. Without missing a beat, they had our Friday night services on YouTube for all of us to enjoy every week and all week long. And it really gave comfort and a sense of normalcy to all of us. And quickly, I mean, the Tons classes were online. We added new programming. We had Fran Shore add a book club and a film club, and all sorts of things were happening online. It was heartening. The Spinoza youth education, all right? And all the kids went from being here and enjoying themselves together to being remote. And it was through the creativity of Denise and Melanie and Deb and Sarah that they created a whole new curriculum right away and got them doing it remotely. And that was an incredible way to keep our young people engaged. It really worked. For me, the thing that I think that really affirmed the indicator that we remained humanistically together was the support of the entire community. I've seen so many of you as little squares, but I know your hearts were here too. But it was also support in another way, because I think all of you know that last year we changed our membership model. We did away with the dues, saying you didn't have to have required dues anymore. We asked individuals and families to make a pledge, a gift from their heart that's appropriate for their life circumstances. And we took a risk. We didn't know what would happen. Well, let me just tell you that the response was astounding. And I want to thank each and every one of you, not just for maintaining the support that you had in previous years, but in many cases, increasing it. And I just want to, do a big nod to all of you who made all of that possible. So, what did I read from that? I read that being remote doesn't mean you're feeling remote. We are all still connected to this temple. And now we are back together again. And things are a little different, they're a little better, but some things we're going to keep that we learned over this year being separated. And that's the innovation of technology. And I gotta say, through the hard work of David Weeks, who's sitting right back there by that computer, we have managed now to be live streaming this service, and we're going to continue to live stream it for those people who aren't able to be here in person. And as Jeff alluded to, we now have a wider audience. We have people in other states, in other countries, and hopefully we're going to keep them tuning in for a long time, keep our community broad. So now that we are back, there are certain things that you just can't do remotely that we get to enjoy. I'm going to start with Sandy Alpenzones. Who's excited about that? That's delicious. That's a good thing. Enjoying hibachi music together. I saw Connie here earlier in the week doing her yoga classes. And we're all looking forward to a resumption of the Spinoza Youth Education in person at the end of September. And Jeff told me I'm supposed to mention that we still do have one position of a teacher position for either 4th or 5th grade open. So if you know someone who is interested in a low-paying but highly rewarding position, Sunday mornings working with young minds, you should see Jeff, absolutely. And lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the person who I think has been behind the scenes making it all happen. That's Anne-Marie Fisher. All right, I'm guessing you actually didn't come here to hear me, but I'm going to throw in one more plug here, and that's for some of our committees in the temple. I want to start with the engagement committee, the idea of creating new programming. Laura and Fran are leading that. I'm hoping that you'll be involved in that, and you'll be able to, I think, help with new educational and fun programs. We just want to have a good time with each other. I also want to call out the Social Justice Committee that just had a meeting a few minutes ago. You can join Audrey and Renee and the involvement of the temple and the broader community. And I know that Kathy would never forgive me if I didn't mention, if you love gardening, we have a very active gardening committee. It's perfect for you. Just want to say that. And lastly for myself, I just want to say I'm so happy to be back here with all of you in person. I look forward to spending the year with you. Welcome back. Thank you so much.
very much appreciated. You know. So let's get going. Arthur, you got to go 2 slides ahead because you forgot Ned's slide. There you go. Ned's already having a slide. Let's continue now with Hine Mato.
Our ancestors hallowed the Sabbath day. In dark times, it was a refuge for them, and in times of prosperity, it gave them rest and joy. As a community, we celebrate the opportunity to gather in that spirit, even as we imagine Shabbat anew. May we too find rest from the week's activities. May we too feel the warmth of love and companionship. May we always feel our joys heightened and our sorrows softened by the love we give and receive.
May we be blessed with Shabbat joy. May we be blessed with Shabbat peace. May we be blessed with Shabbat light.
At this time, I'd like to invite Marty Bernstein and Suzanne Hall to light our Shabbat candles.
We come together this Shabbat, each bringing with us a private world of hopes, of fears, of dreams. Some of us burdened by anxieties and cares that all but crush our hope in the future. Others have hearts filled with happiness, grateful for the joys of the past week, yet aware that even the most fortunate are vulnerable before the mystery of tomorrow. Every life is a unique blending of joy and sorrow, of fulfillment and frustration. Beneath our uniqueness, we are all bound together by our common humanity, all of us deeply yearn to know true freedom and peace. Each of us seeks the personal liberation of a mind that is not enslaved to conventional wisdom, a heart that is able to love without fear, a spirit that cries yes to our potential. Each of us strives, too, for the inner peace that comes with finding a harmony between our aspirations and our abilities. This is the Shabbat peace to which we aspire.
A sense of gratitude is fundamental to our well-being. This is true even when we are well aware that there is no address to which we can direct it. For the grandeur of the universe, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies fill us with awe and challenging our imaginations.
We embrace gratitude.
For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and seasons.
We embrace gratitude.
For human community, our past and future hope, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression.
We embrace gratitude.
For the innumerable deeds of loving kindness which continued even when we were physically apart.
We embrace gratitude.
For the skill and dedication of caregivers, of nurses and doctors and technicians and researchers who work around the clock to heal.
We embrace gratitude.
For the courage of those who put themselves at risk so that others might be served.
We embrace gratitude.
For all the joys that living brings. For resilience in the face of great difficulties. For the caring hearts of loved ones and friends.
We embrace gratitude.
Some wait for hope to capture them. They act as the prisoners of despair. Others go searching for hope. They find nothing but a reflection of their own anger. Hope is an act of will, affirming in the presence of evil that good things will happen, preferring in the face of failure self-esteem to pity. Optimists laugh even in the dark. They know that hope is a lifestyle, not a guarantee.
Let us strive to lead loving, compassionate lives with our hearts, with our wisdom, and with our actions. These are the ideas that we inscribe in our innermost heart. May we practice them day and night, teaching them diligently to our children, through our words and especially through our deeds, so that the next generations learn to revere and celebrate life.
transforming power of love, the redeeming power of compassion, the healing power of forgiveness. These endure in every age. The joy which comes from sharing, the strength which comes from striving, the nourishment which comes from nature. These endure in every age. The sanctity of life, the value of truth, the primacy of justice, these endure in every age. Amidst never-ending change, may we have wisdom to know and to cherish those teachings which endure for all time.
Amen. The last time I spoke at this minimum, none of you were here because Arthur and I were recording for the high holidays, and I got like 10 takes. So, I'm a little rusty, but I'll do the best I can. When this year started, how excited were all of us that vaccine was on its way, right? And then I had to sit back, because I'm just a little bit under some of your ages, and watch with envy as one after another of you went and got that jab, and I waited and waited and waited, and then finally I got it, and I waited 3 more weeks, and I got the next one, and 2 more weeks, and I got the next one. And on that day I ran, did not walk, did not crawl, I ran to Maryland, to DC to see my children. I'm sure a lot of you can relate, right? Since then I've been back. We just got back last week from a slightly more extended trip. If you see me wobbling here, it's because I was so excited when I came back unpacking my car that I tripped on the stairs in my garage and destroyed my ankle and my shin. I'm all bounded up here, but it looks good, right? So there's really nothing more that a rabbi can pick for a topic after what we've been through than something that would reflect on what we've been through. So I decided that perhaps tonight I would take a look at what we lost, what we gained 200 pounds, and what we learned from all of this. This was a unique experience. Our ancestors did not necessarily go through it this way. Plagues were part of their lives all the time, but usually it was also part of their almost guaranteed deaths. Few people made it through something like this. And boy, did it land on us like a ton of bricks, right? It was 1 minute, I'm writing a presentation, I think it was about Dr. Seuss. And the next minute, we're figuring out what are we going to do. And no one knew, out of the blue. Remember those early days when we had no knowledge of what we were really up against, when we didn't really understand what it would take to keep us safe. I remember Saul, I think, Foreman, you sent us a video with some kind of glitter, right? And cleaning his groceries. And how many hours did we spend cleaning our cockamamie groceries for what turned out to be no reason whatsoever? Most of us in this congregation, at least as far as COVID is concerned, made it through safely. But not Danny Frisch, of blessed memory. We lost him before we even knew it was upon us. He caught it, we believe, when he was out at a luncheon with his friend Irv Miller and some of their buddies. Jack Kaufman was next. I looked down at where you're all sitting, and that was his seat there. Just before we closed the temple, we had our very last public event here. Some of you were at his 100th birthday. And within weeks, he was gone. Fortunately, both of them died without suffering, because so many others died alone, very, very much alone, and not always painlessly. Later, Mike Beltzman was taken from us by this disease. He had previously watched his brother Stanley die from it, and his sister-in-law became very, very ill. The worldwide death toll, we all know, stands at 4 million. Here at home, I think we're encroaching upon 607,000. No one can take the place of these beloved people. But they are not the only losses. The loss of life, as great as it was, we all lost something. We have all been through a collective trauma. We lost precious time with family. Even those of us who lived in the same city found ourselves distanced from those that we loved. 6 feet, masks, outdoors. We missed so many simchas, so many happy occasions, life cycle events, or just those holidays that we look forward to every year. The virus stole these from us, and they were irreplaceable, and we will not get those experiences back. There were so many other losses. I don't think I need to rehearse them for you, but just because it's important to remember. Obstacles to our children's education, employment challenges that affected so many people as our entire workforce, or at least a good chunk of it, shifted toward technology that we were just not familiar with. Societal inequities that we would expect to come up during a time of crisis roared up, laying bare all of these socioeconomic disparities, access to food, to medical care, widespread job loss, as I mentioned. Lack of access to the internet. Wasn't it like it was the duct tape that was holding us all together? And so many people we discovered did not have it. And of course, of all races, of all peoples, Women, no matter what their status was, bore some of the greatest burden, as those who were working were suddenly also child care providers and full-time teachers, and took on all of those responsibilities. The toll on our mental health, I don't know about you, but the people that I know and love, was enormous. The slow-moving hurricane of a crisis took an immense psychological toll on our fellow Americans, still on many, and on people all over the world. And it's not over yet. Many people are still struggling with the lack of certainty. Every day there's a conversation, hey, the New York Yankees, hey, this group, that group, what's going on in Israel? How's the UK doing? We're scared of things that we weren't. I remember that old jingle, Delta is ready when you are. How about Delta is ready when you're not? And even if we are far, far safer than the unvaccinated, and almost completely safe as we are tonight, surrounded by the vaccinated, some of us still have anxieties. Jerry Lieberman and I were sharing with him, I'm not a big handshaker right now. I never was, to be honest with you, but I don't mind the elbow. And I'll confess, I did make one change in the service tonight. We're going to forego the lighting of these candles because, as you know, I have to be very close to you to do that. And I don't want to endanger you at this point. Even with a bad cold, a lot of us, our immune systems are not back to where they were. We'll return to that when we can, and we'll do something special instead. The author Anna Russell wrote in a recent New Yorker article called The Age of Reopening Anxiety, What If We're Afraid to Go Back to Normal Life? And she addressed this odd transitional moment that we're still in, we may be in for a while, talking about an American Psychological Association report which found that half of Americans surveyed feel uneasy about adjusting to in-person interactions after the pandemic. I have to tell you, I'm a little overwhelmed. Some of you may be too. Some of you called me about this. And I assured you that we would make sure everybody was vaccinated. But you can't help but have that feeling. This is akin to what is called by psychologists re-entry syndrome. Prisoners feel it. People who have been hostages for a long time feel it. We've been through this transformative experience together. And we're finding that this not quite post-COVID world is still difficult to navigate. We don't all see it the same way. Some of us are very comfortable, some of us much less so. Do I wear my mask? Under what circumstances? We saw today that certain countries and counties in our own nation are changing the rules here and there. Maybe that makes it easier for some. Do I say yes to this invitation? Do my children go along with me? Many of my colleagues who have young children are very afraid of coming in person, even with vaccinated people, because their children aren't. I've got 2 fully vaccinated weddings scheduled for August, and I have to tell you, every day I wake up and I say to Arthur, should I do the wedding? Should I do the wedding? I think at this point it might be a little late to refuse. And I don't think they're going to want to put a little TV screen up in front of them. In some homes, it's spouses who are at odds over re-entry. And finally, there are those of us who, upon re-entering society, have found that we've lost a little faith, maybe just a little, maybe more, in our fellow human beings. I don't know about you, but I always thought if ever we experienced the kind of earth-shattering upheaval that we have, the kind that we always had only read about in history books up until now, the kind that I remember thinking, wow, I wonder if I'll ever live through something like that. That we'd figure out a way to come together, that we'd row in one direction, right? Isn't that what we learned about World War II? Perhaps we should have realized that given the fact that we were being led from the beginning by a malignant narcissist who told us that it would all go away just like magic, that maybe we weren't going to come together over this thing. And maybe even more when we saw the widespread resistance to social distancing and masking. But even then, I thought, well, the vaccine will come along. Everybody will take the vaccine. We'll all dance the horror. We'll be back together again. It'll save us all. And then, well, I don't have to tell you what's going on. You can read the newspaper as well as I can. It might be better, perhaps, to put that loss also in the column of what we learned. Because sadly, we did learn some distressing things about our neighbors. So let's move on now to what we gained, because there was some of that too. It was already a few months into the lockdown that one of our members I was on the phone with said to me, you know, I feel kind of bad, but parts of me are really enjoying this. You know, I'm anxious, true, there's a lot of uncertainty, but person had young children, I found that I'm really loving the family time. I don't usually get this. We're not usually together this much. And I told them, don't feel bad. Sometimes good things do come from bad experiences. This is why we hear those stories, right, of World War II. This was true here too. Not everything about the pandemic was bad for everyone, and we needn't feel bad about that. Despite being greatly saddened, as Arthur and I were, by every one of those trips, those seasonal trips that we would normally take to see our kids and grandson at the time being canceled, the sadness of missing my daughter's entire pregnancy and the first half-year life, I can tell you that I was incredibly happy, and I'm sorry for the indulgence here, to spend that year plus with somebody that I got along with so well and had such a nice time with. And I know that many of you felt the same way. And I also learned that the relationships that I had with my family, and I know you probably learned this too, that they are much stronger even than the physical presence. And given the technology that we had, we learned new ways. More texting, FaceTiming. I made a puppet character for Ensure Inspired Me for my grandson. I probably produced 40 different videos using the skills that you paid me to learn, by the way, to do your Shabbats and so forth. And when I arrived at his home in April, he and I and the puppet did a little dance together of joy. It was an incredible memory. That was a new skill that I picked up. And a lot of you picked up new skills and new interests. Some of us, and I've talked to many of you about these kinds of things, you got into new hobbies, you learned a new language. There was, remember the sourdough bread revival that affected us all internationally, I suppose. One member, and she was alone in her home, but I know she seized the opportunity to watch over, and I meant to ask, probably 40,000 movies, 50,000 movies throughout the course of the pandemic. Some of us rediscovered nature. I was in a park for the first time over and over and over, and I am, as Charlie Paul says, at two with nature. But I learned to love it when I had nowhere else to go. And many of you I know took regular journeys out into the world. That's something that we gained too. Perhaps more than anything, we realized that the social creatures that we are, we would find a way to be together. And even absent physical presence, we learned how to be together, as Ned was joking about on Zoom. Now, I know none of you knew what Zoom was the day the pandemic hit. And I know this because I spent hours with many of you. That became my full-time job. I was the Zoom tutor for our congregation. And by the time we got to where we are today, we've learned that this was a route for us to human contact, no matter how much we were frustrated by talking to postage stamps. It wasn't ideal, and it wasn't what we really wanted, but when people died in our congregation, when we were unable to hold an outdoor funeral, we held them on the internet, over Zoom. When Marilyn Rowan's blessed memory died, a great builder, founder of our congregation, I think we almost maxed out on the number of contacts that we were allowed to have, and people stayed on with that for hours afterwards, comforting each other and telling stories. It was remarkable. We learned how to be there. We learned as a community how to learn together, to celebrate together. We had 2 fundraisers online. People from throughout the world who'd never heard of humanistic Judaism, they were exposed to what we do. And there are things that we'll probably keep. I'll tell you, the nightly Hanukkah candle lighting, I love that. I especially remember Jessica and Berta being on several of those. And while we'll certainly have our Super Supper Hanukkah blowout again this year, I hope, Delta willing, we'll try to do that every week. I also found that it was a great tool to tutor the B'nai Mitzvah. Some of you may not be aware, I do all the tutoring pretty much now for the B'nai Mitzvah, so it was a nice way to have a relationship with our young people. But even in non-COVID times, parents are very busy. It's hard for them to get their kids here and there. And so while I've met with a few of them in person here and there, now since they were vaccinated too, having that has been a real gift. And I have a feeling that when it comes to doing the temple's business, we'll be in person sometimes, but I also have a feeling we're going to be giving way to, there won't be any snow days in the future, a big snowstorm, and I have a feeling that my president will say, let's just move it to Zoom. We pushed all of these technologies and things that we wanted to happen and made them happen, whether it was dinner parties or holidays or whatever it was, because we needed each other. We needed each other immensely. And what we gained was a reminder that we always have been there for each other. This community has always been there for its members. We have been there always for our loved ones, and we can continue to be. We have very short lives. We have very short lives, and we are very fragile creatures. And this reminded us of that on a global scale. And certainly our mental health took a blow. But we gained a very important reminder that when humanity seeks a way through, we can collectively find it. Which brings us to the last part. What else did we learn? So I want to spend just a few moments as I conclude reflecting upon 2 or 3 of these. One of them is something that I think is a very, very important, probably a foundational issue for humanists, lacking an ability to depend upon a deity, God, whatever. When we're in times of trouble, we have to seek resilience in different ways. Life is always offering up its twists and turns, not always like this one, but every day there's something, you know? Every day somebody can come home from a great trip and trip on their stairs. I've noticed some of you look a little different. Probably have been through some experiences. I know some of you have been through some additional traumas. The pandemic came with all of that, but so does life all the time. Psychologists define resilience as the process that humans have of adapting well, or as well as possible, in the face of adversity, of tragedy, of threats, of stress. And it's never, ever easy. And it, I think, is in some ways more difficult for humanists, because we don't look to the heavens to find that strength. We have to look inside ourselves and to each other. That, after all, is what A4O speaks about. We also are the kinds of people who like to think we're in charge, right? There's that little bit of self-empowerment that goes with it, but we're not always in charge. There are unexpected and uncontrollable events like this one and others that can hit us, and the ensuing difficulties and distress can be so overwhelming that we feel that we lack the wherewithal to even imagine how we're going to get through it. And yet to survive them, we have to. We have to find ways. And those ways include connecting to each other, as I spoke about, of nurturing a sense of perspective. One of the things I've always taught my children when they were in the midst of their young, youthful crises was, just wait. You will have perspective on this someday. I have to say, and maybe I'm a little sad, but I'm also a little happy about it, my own children learned a sense of perspective from this. And I know that all of us, even those of us who have a good sense of perspective, learn something too. We've just got to find that inner strength to go through it. I know not all of you share my admiration for Winston Churchill. Fran will talk about it another time. But there was one thing that he said that I always carried with me, and I did throughout this entire pandemic. He said, when you're going through hell, keep going. We also learned a little bit about hope. I have to admit that Rabbi Wine's reading that we heard a few moments ago, hope is a choice, never found, never given, always taken, about how some wait for it to capture them, they acting as prisoners of despair. I have to admit I didn't always understand that. I struggled with it. It's in all of our books. It's one of his most popular readings. It's in our latest compilation that we publish and sell everywhere. When he talked about hope as an act of will affirming in the presence of evil, I mean, it's a natural evil, but boy, oh boy, this pandemic was an evil. That we would somehow grasp for ourselves and hold on to the idea that things might get better. It's not a guarantee, he said, but it is a lifestyle. And I have to say that really began to become quite clear to me as we went through this. First, it was during the high holidays when I took on the ideas of light, strength, and hope, and I addressed it. And I really remember at that moment, I got it. Throughout this pandemic, as I spoke to so many of you, you expressed that kind of hope. It was really a testimony to Rabbi Wein's teachings and the teachings of humanistic Judaism. I remember one member, he's not here with us tonight, but he comes frequently, from the very beginning of the pandemic, and at first I thought, oh my God, I'm going to wring his neck. He was sending me these optimistic texts. Oxford is working on a vaccine. Don't be surprised if it's here in 8 or 9 months. They're working on this new technology, something with RNA and this and that. And I thought, please stop. And a few weeks, a few months into it, I thought, no, keep it going, please. That's what it means to hold on to hope, to find the things, to look for it, to make it part of your lifestyle, to make it, as it would, and to spin his words, to affirm that the evil is not going to get you, and if it does, you're going to know what to do with it. And this is an expression of resilience that I was not really aware of before, even though I've read that poem how many times and sang that song how many times. And one last thing I want to give a shout out to that we learned. I think we learned the importance of science in our lives, something that we have really, as a society, forgotten. I looked at some figures today that showed that in 1975, it didn't matter what political party you were, most people, upwards of 80% of Americans polled, demonstrated a high degree of respect for science. And then I turned around and looked on Twitter and saw what that clown in Florida is doing. Have you seen that? Don't Fauci my Florida? As he's sitting on 20% of the cases. By the way, a guy we should be very, very aware of. This modern rejection of science comes with the supernatural religious beliefs, the pseudoscience, the superstition, all those kinds of things that we humanists reject, but which divert folks from really understanding what science is about. But there are people in our own camp too. You know, we've become so accommodated to and so accustomed to the settled science that for us science has taken on a little bit of a role of a deity, an authority in our lives. And that's fine if you're talking about evolution. And it's also fine if you're talking about, you know, what goes around what in the cosmos, right? But what about when you meet something new, like we did? You know, it was called the novel coronavirus for a reason, correct? It was new, they'd never experienced it before. And I heard people all over the spectrum, but really surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, in our own camps, saying, oh, is it masks or no masks? Does it wipe down the groceries or not? Every day we're hearing something new. Yes, that's how it works. It's a method, it's not an authority. Yeah, it's an authority when you get to the point of does the sun go around the earth go around the sun. By then it's your authority, because it already showed you all those different ways to do it. But it's not an authority until it's had a chance to explore things. And that's why, because we don't like to live with uncertainties, I think a lot of us became frustrated with the spokesman. I'm sure that there were 1 or 2 days that you wished that Dr. Fauci would just tell you what to do already. And that wasn't the day that he could, because he didn't know that day. Was it hanging in the air? Was it not hanging in the air? Was it okay with the mask here or not there? But in the end, I think that our faith that we placed in science, as long as we keep in mind what it is, was not displaced or misplaced at all. The scientific method, not science, not some ethereal thing called science, our Lord, our God, but a method to truth, a path, a journey to understanding how things work and what you can do about them, if you can do something about them. And here we were, a spectacular amount of doing something about it. I wish Tucker Carlson would understand that. Our scientific method became our own self-constructed savior, a real Messiah. We've been waiting a long time as Jews for the Messiah. This ain't the Messiah, but for now, it's strong enough. In any case, for almost a year and a half, we've endured and are continuing to endure this historic upheaval on this planetary scale. And we've lost a lot, but we've also gained, and we've learned. As a result of a microscopic virus, we realize that we will never again be the same. But so long as we take these lessons of this experience forward into our lives, I think we can continue to celebrate the human spirit and to hold fast to that incredibly essential lesson of humanism. Humanity shares so much. Shema Adam, hear O human. Humanity is one. Thank you. So now I'm going to invite Elaine to give us a reading about peace, and we'll sing shalom songs and other things.
Shabbat Shalom. If there is to be peace in the world,
There must be peace in the nations.
if there is to be peace in the nations,
There must be peace in the cities.
if there is to be peace in the cities,
There must be peace between neighbors.
if there is to be peace between neighbors,
There must be peace in the home.
if there is to be peace in the home,
There must be peace in the heart.
In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support. Excuse me. Those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight our well wishes are extended to these members of our community and to their loved ones. To Evelyn Krieger, Joe Gaden, Julie Eliason, Karen Tremper-Harris, and Rabbi Peter Schweitzer. If there is someone whom you're thinking about, as we start over on this side, please feel free to mention their names. Anybody up here in the right gallery, on the side here, yes? Thank you. Down here, Elaine.
John Mackler.
Anybody else in this section? Over here, anybody?
Beth Singer.
Did you miss anyone?
Lynn Masters.
May all who suffer know that they are not alone. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a refuah shlema, a complete recovery, the renewal of their bodies, and the renewal of their spirits.
Help us find the courage
got sick and didn't know what to do. I started to make the call, and then I remembered. I forgot what the Yiddish expression meant. I started to call, then I remembered. I wanted your recipe. I started to call, then I remembered. Good news, bad news, wisdom and guidance. I start to make the calls, but then I remember. You aren't out there. You aren't going to answer. You're in my heart. I'll always remember.
Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. We have many to remember tonight, as this is our first gathering since the pandemic. I mentioned earlier Manny Frisch, Jack Kaufman, and Mike Beltzman, who died of COVID. But we also lost many members and friends during COVID, during the pandemic, to other causes. Inez Klimist, Marilyn Rowans, Sylvia Rubach, Cece Orman, Philip Kaplan, Priscilla Molnar, Stuart Rice, Bernice Bunny Lasker, Elaine Gluckman, Patty Becker, Arlene Goldberg, Harvey Frank, Isabel Vander, Samuel Lee Simpson, and Martin Shore. This past week, we also bid farewell to a beloved member of our congregation, Norman Tepley, and to the son of Beverly Siegel, Jeffrey Siegel. We remember each of these beloved people who did not live to see the end of this pandemic. Tonight we also observe the yard sites of Eva Beltzman, Sylvia Gottesman Creed, Judith Dessenberg, Bill Ernst, Harvey Frank, Clara Gardone, Sidney Hillenberg, Merrill Miller, Gerald Rose, Jack Ross, David Sacker, Myrtle Wiener, and Levi Wohlberg. I'm sure there are many other names that we'd like to remember tonight, so once again, we'll start on this side of the room if you have a name to remember. Yes? Thank you, Tom.
Dennis Brooks.
Marilyn Logan.
Thank you.
Eleanor Dorfman.
June Campbell.
Anybody else I missed here? Yes, Diana?
Ira Firestone. Lillian Finkelstein.
Anybody in the back? Thank you. Yes.
Gary Green.
Beverly? Yes. Thank you. Did we miss anyone at all? Yehi Zikram Livracha. May their memories provide blessing. Let's take a moment now in reflection. If you can do so comfortably, please rise for our humanistic interpretation of Kaddish. We say together, Nit Gadal v'nit Kadash v'ruach ha'adam. Let us enhance and exalt all people in the spirit of humanity. Let us acclaim the preciousness of life. Let us show gratitude for life by approaching it with reverence. Let us embrace the whole world, even as we wrestle with its parts. Let us each in our own way take up our share in serving the world and seeking truth. May our commitment to life help us to strengthen healing of spirit honor. Welcome back. Actually, I learned how to teach children piano on Zoom. Try that sometime. And I want to thank again Sandy Altman for sponsoring our own and all of you for coming tonight. It's a great treat to be here with you. I looked forward to this moment for so many months, and it's a kind of a miracle of the human spirit that we are able to gather again. Next week we will be here again at 7 o'clock. We will hear from Representative, and I forgot her first name, Manukian, and who will speak to us about voter suppression, a very, very big and important issue. So we'll get you to the ONEG, but first we're going to sing about, once again, how terrific it is when people get to be together. Ine Mato, a different version. Ine Mato. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.